Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing and on this important issue of recruitment and training and retention of law enforcement officers in Indian country. I want to thank our witnesses. Crime on Indian reservations is an enormous problem in so many states, certainly in Minnesota. For example, on the Red Lake Reservation, which I recently visited, the crime rate is 8 times higher than the national rate. And one of the basic reasons, there are so many different reasons for this, but one of them is the simple lack of police officers at Red Lake and in Indian country. To obtain minimal officer safety standards as determined by the BIA, Red Lake would need a minimum of 32 officers, and however, currently they have 15, less than a half of what they need. And the BIA's minimum standard is set by the standard you would put per person, but if you think about the crime rate being that much higher, you'd actually want a much higher population of police. So they're incredibly understaffed. And there are multiple reasons for the shortage. Basic one is lack of funding to hire more officers, and the responsibility for providing that funding falls on the federal government. Obviously, we don't want to, I would completely identify myself with Senator Tester's remarks, which is we want to make sure that we have a plan and a clear vision on how to spend that money. But we are failing Red Lake, and we're failing so many of the other tribes in Minnesota and across the country. Lack of good crime data in Indian country is really another huge challenge. It's something that we're just beginning to address in Minnesota with a program called iCare, which would have the reservation sharing data, which they haven't been doing. And in many ways, it makes it harder to track down criminals who go from one reservation to another or go from the reservations in the Twin Cities or elsewhere. So, and this has getting the cooperation of the tribes in Minnesota, and I think it's a great model. It's called iCare. I'd love for you to look into it. Minnesota also has the unique challenge of being a public law 280 state, which means that the federal government has delegated jurisdiction over tribal law enforcement to the state for most of the tribes, and this just creates a lot of challenges for police departments on reservations across the state. Anyway, the bottom line is we have to figure out how to reduce crime in Indian country, and this has to include more and more effective officers working in Indian country and providing them with good training and giving them incentives to stay and an opportunity for advancement and just a chance at upward mobility in order to keep them there. So I'm looking forward to hearing your testimony and for us delving into these issues today. I've read your testimony and I want to thank you for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just follow up on that. So what you're saying is if there were more officers recruited, that you could train them.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Mr. Garriott, the chairman couldn't be here today, and he asked me to ask a question. Congress has appropriated $990 million for law enforcement services at the BIA over the past 4 years. On October 30th, 2009, the President signed the Interior Appropriations Bill, which provided $303 million in funding for BIA law enforcement services. And I understand these funds have not gone out to the tribes that have self-determination contracts, who can't pay their officers. Can you please tell the committee the reason for this delay and when the funding will go out to the tribes? The chairman tells me the tribes have called this committee because they have not received the money from the BIA.
Are you referencing 2010 money, or are you talking all increases, just for clarification?
I believe it's 2010 money.
We have not allocated that money yet, but we plan to, and we will be working aggressively to do so in a efficient manner.
Okay, well, I would urge you, please, to do that as soon as possible. Thank you. You know, I look at this and the reason for attrition. It just makes me. I just know that there's all kinds of reasons for attrition. Paying, housing. When you have, Senator Barrasso said, 6 officers on a reservation the size of Wind River, it can't be safe. These guys go out and patrol by themselves, right? Either of you, Mr. Wright?
Oftentimes.
So is it more dangerous being an officer in Indian country than elsewhere?
I would let Mr. Thompson answer that, but first I would, just like to again emphasize that we are working very aggressively to get more officers on the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Senator Franken, we've talked about the high crime rates, about 3.5 times the national average. We've seen reservations that have reported 20 times the national average crime rates. The fewer resources that we have, the fewer officers that we have working in those types of rural environments with between 3.5 and 20 times the national average crime rates, it's definitely more dangerous to work in those areas.
So that can be a reason for attrition as well.
Absolutely.
And for not being able to recruit people.
Absolutely.
And so it can be more dangerous, and it's more dangerous because you're underfunded and because understaffed.
Correct.
All right? And, I think these numbers that where the need is, so many people per 1,000 people, that's based on a normal crime rate, right? So if you have a 3.5 times the crime rate, you'd think you'd need 3.5 times as many as a normal population, right? Wouldn't that follow?
That's correct, sir.
So as it is, we have about like half the number that we need to meet the goals, which are less than the normal goals you would have outside of Indian country. And yet the need clearly is higher than that goal you're not even trying to get to. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Well, first and foremost is filling the vacancies that we do have.
I understand.
And spending that money efficiently.
Well, before the chairman asked about having another academy and maybe having one on the plains, northern plains. The United Tribes Technical Colleges have talked about having an academy there. Would that be helpful to you, Mr. Garrett?
It would be very helpful in our recruitment efforts. It was passed BIA policy that we required state-certified police officers to go through the basic 16-week training down in Artesia. This was regardless if they had 10 years law enforcement experience. We have since changed that policy so that if they complete this 2-week bridge program where they receive federal firearms certification and courses in Indian law, that they can then be a federal police officer. So it will cut down the amount of training time, and it is a big incentive for.
Okay, I know you have a bridge program there, but I would suggest that maybe having a full program there might be helpful as well. But my time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I'll try to get through my questions fast. Mr. Posey, you did mention that it took 9 months for you to get an officer through the BIA, but 2 months when you did it yourself. Is that right?
Yes, in this instance, Senator.
Okay. Do you share Ms. Pearson's skepticism about the BIA, about their effectiveness?
I do share some of that skepticism that she mentioned in terms of the system needing to be addressed and needing to be fixed. I think we're at a certain time in our history here where a lot of tribes, including the tribes from Wind River, are trying to develop our own law enforcement model that's tribally driven. We just need the BIA to be on the bus when we're driving it.
Would you say this is outside of law enforcement? Would you say this is a problem just in general?
I think it's just in general for the BIA to some respect. I think in our community on the Wind River, the law enforcement agencies work pretty well together. Of course, our reservation is one of the unique reservations that has about 80% tribally trust land. So the majority of our land on the reservation is not checkerboard, although we are surrounded by a couple towns, and of course the county overlaps that. But
I'm just talking about on education, on healthcare, how you assess the BIA's performance.
I think it's not been adequate for Indian country.
Okay. Let's move on to something. Just why is it so hard with unemployment so high in Indian country? Why is it so hard to recruit from your own people?
I think everything is all interconnected, Senator. I think we have to get more adequate funding and more effective models to address substance abuse, drug abuse. I think have strong preventive and reactive programs. Our proactive programs. We are always on our heels in Indian country in terms of law enforcement, drug abuse, substance abuse, and sometimes that lays claim to getting something done proactively.
Are you saying that drug abuse and alcohol abuse lowers the recruitment pool, or you're saying that makes it hard to recruit people because they have to deal with those problems, or is it both?
A little of both. I think that some may have problems. I mean, we as one tribe, I know many tribes do have drug testing policies and stuff, and the numbers do show that those are serious issues in our area. But I think people feel safer. People have better access to programs, whether they may have a problem, is going to only enhance their ability to want to do better for themselves and our tribal communities.
Okay, I just got a note that I have to vote as soon as possible. So I thank you, Mr. Gaikowski. I wanted to ask you about recruiting from your people because it was unusual that you have so many officers from your reservation. But I got this note that I have to go. I want to thank you both for your testimony and for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.